All right, all right. Welcome to another episode of Money Morning. How you doing, Andrew?
Good. Good morning, Richard. Good morning to the viewers.
And we got a couple of questions here we took during the week that I dropped in the description of the video. First, we're going to deal with bankruptcy fraud, then talk a little about crypto, and going to have a conversation about a beef as well. So bankruptcy fraud, we got this question from this guy, and he said, I'd like to hear a topic on bankruptcy fraud. To me, it's an interesting topic because the mafia has been doing it for a while. I have a feeling this guy might have been watching a little bit too much TV, but anyway. What I heard they did is maxing out their credit cards by purchasing alcohol, selling it at a discount. Selling at a discount, I guess, Anyway, so like bankruptcy in Canada is governed under the Bankruptcy Insolvencies Act. It's a very thick book. I've seen it. It's like if you print up the entire thing, it's like this. And it, generally speaking, is a guide that the trustees must follow to the T, cross the T's, dot the I's. And yes, they are aware of people trying to fraudulently use bankruptcy to get out of debt, but they've also introduced a lot of legislation that's made that quite difficult, if I'm being honest. So you're a little more familiar than I am with bankruptcy and how it's used. So like, how could somebody use bankruptcy as a way to get out of debt that might be fraudulent? Like, could they actually go out and rack up all their credit cards, buy a bunch of alcohol and file bankruptcy on that debt and then sell all that alcohol at a discount? I mean, is that a feasible thing?
Technically, yes. That can be applied to different types of purchases, but essentially you can use credit to purchase whatever it is that you want and discharge those debts through bankruptcy. But there are provisions and sections in the Bankruptcy and Insolvencies Act that tries to eliminate that possibility. Obviously, there's the negative damage to your credit rating that most people would like to try to avoid. So that's one reason why they won't go out, just spend a whole bunch of money and then try to get the easy way out. But there's other areas that bankruptcy trustees are using, which are asking questions such as, have you specifically, I don't have the specific questions in front of me, but I've seen bankruptcy documents where it asks, have you received a inheritance in the last 12 months? Have you sold or disposed of any assets in the last 12 months? Have you disposed of any assets internationally in the last 12 months? Some of the questions are within 36 months. Some of the questions are within 60 months. So they ask you a whole sequence of questions, and they also go through your banking information to see what you've got coming in, what you've got going out, so they can match up to make sure things are legitimate. So there are some ways that trustees can avoid the means of someone trying to take advantage of the system, but there are ways that you can dupe it. It's not exactly that difficult to run up some debts and then discharge them through bankruptcy, pay back a lot less. There are, as I said, negative repercussions. You're going to have a bad credit rating if you file bankruptcy a second time. So let's just assume that you do this because you've racked up $20,000 of alcohol and you want to, eliminate it for virtually nothing. Well, let's just assume that, 10 years down the road, you're going through a messy divorce, and that divorce is costing you $80,000 in legal fees. Well, you don't have $80,000 in your bank account, so you're financing it on credit. Well, what if you need to file bankruptcy now because you've just accrued so much debt in a messy divorce, and you've already used your first-time bankruptcy trump card on some stupidity like purchasing of alcohol? Well, you could have gotten away with the bankruptcy at a lot of lower cost through that messy divorce if you hadn't filed bankruptcy before. So there are, you got to be wise with when you're going to use that trump card and throw down the bankruptcy and say, okay, I'm going to use it for this. You don't want to use it for something small, and I know saying that a $20,000 or a $10,000 debt load might not be small to that individual, but on the grand scheme of things, most people in Canada have a greater debt load than $10,000 or $20,000. So you don't want to just throw down the bankruptcy trump card for something smaller like that when you might need it for something later in life. You want to try to find out a better way to eliminate the debt if it's a smaller amount, like 10, 20, 25,000, something along those lines.
And sorry, just to clarify, if you go bankrupt a second time in Canada, the cost to go like they make the penalty higher for you, right?
Yes. So depending on your financial circumstances, a first-time bankrupt in Canada would either be 9 months or 21 months. and that's your discharge period. So from the time you sign the bankruptcy documents with your trustee to the time the court discharges your bankruptcy, meaning you've completed your term, it's either 9 or 21 months. 9 for your first time if you have a lower income, 21 months first time if you have a higher income. But if you file bankruptcy a second time, it goes from 9 months to 24 months for the low income individual, and from 21 months to 36 months for a higher income individual. So now you're 3 years bankrupt on your credit report, and your discharge period is 3 years, and then it remains on your credit file for 14 years rather than just 7 years. So it's extremely lengthier if you're going bankrupt for a second time than you are for a first time. That's why it makes sense to try to avoid bankruptcy if you can, especially if the debt load is relatively small, because you might need to use a trump card like bankruptcy later in life if something terrible happens to you.
Yeah, I mean, there's a lot of things that you can do to goose the system. I don't know that bankruptcy is the best one. I mean, I'm sure there's people that have used it where they've gotten rid of all of their assets and they wait like a year or two, and then they go out and rack up all their credit cards. And then they'll go and cry poverty, blow all that money. Maybe they get cash advances, and they'll go file bankruptcy, maybe at a fairly low cost because they don't have a lot of income and be out of debt within that year period of time or so. So it's entirely feasible. Just want to grab the super sticker here from Heather. So thanks for the donation to the channel, Heather. Appreciate it. So beyond that, I mean, I don't want to turn this into, hey, here's how you scam the system, guys. But I mean, like Andrew was saying, have you had an inheritance in the last 2 years? Have you sold any assets? Have you gotten rid of any investments, gold bars, Bitcoin? I mean, I saw this tweet the other day on Twitter about, I can't remember what it was specifically, but it was about some kind of assets. And it was like, hey, maybe you just had a boating accident and lost all of insert what it is that they're, coming after. And it's at the bottom of the lake with your tinfoil boat sort of thing, right? There's any number of ways that you can goose the system. I don't think that bankruptcy is the best way. It's a legitimate way to get rid of debt if you have a ton of debt and not a lot of assets. Like with what we do at Total Debt Freedom with debt settlement, it's good for people that have debt and also have assets. If you have loads of debt, like let's say you've got $100,000 worth of credit card debt, unsecured debt, you've been out of work for a year, maybe you're disabled, maybe you're laid off and you had a bad year and you don't have any assets, meaning you don't own a car, you don't own a house, because they only exempt certain things from bankruptcy, right? Like tools of the trade. Like if you're a mechanic, you get to keep your tool chest. If you have a vehicle that's worth, I don't know what the number is right now, let's say it's $5,500, whatever it says in the Bankruptcy Insolvencies Act, you get to keep certain things that are exempt from it. So it's not the best way if you want to goose the system, but it's a legitimate way that should be used for legitimate, like high levels of debt when you have nothing in the way of assets to show for yourself. That's my view anyway.
I agree. And it also, you want to probably consider that option with high amounts of government debt, because government debt is virtually extremely impossible to settle. And if you owe the government $10,000, $15,000 on income taxes or whatnot, and you got yourself $50,000 or $60,000 of unsecured credit cards as well, you might want to consider that as your ultimate way out of debt, because bankruptcy can discharge government debt. So, and it's done pretty quickly, unlike a settlement. You can try to negotiate with the government for 2 years and get nowhere on a settlement negotiation with the government. So there's really, you got to look at your options. You got to look at your situation and determine what's your best option given your circumstances. And when you consult with our office, we go over your circumstances. We ask you a bunch of questions. We ask you what your goals are. We ask you what needs to be asked to determine which direction you need to go in. And if you need to go through the route of bankruptcy, we let you know that would be your best option. If you don't want to go bankrupt, then obviously we can't force you to do such a thing. We might recommend that that's the case. I've actually had a conversation recently with a major financial institution here in Canada where the conversation was leading towards an individual with a high debt load with a low income. And the bank manager asked me, what would be the individual's, our client's best course of action? And I said, well, bankruptcy probably would be the best suitable for that individual. But this individual didn't want to file bankruptcy. And obviously you can't force an individual to do what they don't want to do. If the individual wants to try to do the honorable thing and repay what they can repay, then that individual has the right to choose to do so. But some circumstances will dictate that bankruptcy would be your best call, and some situations will dictate that a debt settlement offer or program will be your best call.
Yeah, before we move on from the bankruptcy thing to the crypto question, you're not always able to file bankruptcy. In some cases, you might have to file a consumer proposal, which takes quite a bit of time and does quite a bit of damage to your credit. In fact, I'd argue it's a far worse remedy to debt than a bankruptcy, in my view. But yeah, it's not cut and dry like that. It's not like you can say, oh, the mafia goes out and buys barrels and barrels of booze and they sell it at a discount after they've filed for bankruptcy. It's not as simple as that. There's a lot of checks and balances in place that make that difficult to do. Maybe that was true in the 1950s or something like that. I don't think it's true today. It's not a common practice. I mean, Andrew and I have talked to a lot of trustees over the last 20 years. I have anyway. It just doesn't go down that way. There's another question here from somebody else. The follow-up to that is, what are your opinions on cryptocurrency, including Bitcoin? I see it as a storage of value. I'm just going to share my screen here. If you don't own Bitcoin, I'm just going to say it, you're a fool. You're missing out on a very good asset class. Bitcoin. So what is this over the last 5 years? So year 1 through 5. So Bitcoin's increased over 3,000%, gold 74%, S&P indexy about 65%. It's a far better performing asset class. I would agree that it's more of a store of value. It's like digital gold than it is a use of currency. Although I do buy stuff with Bitcoin. I mean, there's certain things that I'll buy throughout the year that they'll just basically ship to me from anywhere in the world. Bitcoin's an easy way to pay. The only problem right now is payment transactions can take quite a while. And in some cases, the fees can be a little bit higher than what you'd expect for what they've been promising on it. But they've got a lot of developers working on that right now that are improving the way the network processes payments and the way that you can transfer crypto from wallet to wallet. So overall, I don't have a ton to dive down on this because I'm realistically not an expert, but I will say I've done very well with the Bitcoin portfolio that I've held over the years. I've bought in and out of it. It's on a bit of a tear right now. I think it's probably peaked, if I'm being honest. Although I have noticed that there's a lot of YouTube ads showing right now on pre-roll ads where people are promising big gains, and there's a new wave coming, buy into Bitcoin sort of thing, like right now. And it's like, okay, these are the fear of missing out crowds. And there's people out there that are just profiting from, the less sophisticated cryptocurrency investors, I'll put it that way, who will have another round of pumps. I mean, we might see it go up to, I think it's just over $20,000 Canadian right now. You might see it go up another 1,000 or two, before there's a correction, but it's a good time to consider taking some profits. There's a comment here from somebody. Krusty says Bitcoin's controlled by Chinese miners. Still a good investment, though. What do you want to say?
I got a question for you. So how easy is it to use the Bitcoin transfer? Is the process an easy process for the ordinary individual to utilize? Like if you've got money in the portfolio, I know they're called wallets, but if you were to move money from your wallet to your banking, how long does it take? Is it a simplified process? Like, do you have to go through Google videos to learn how to do it, or is it something that's simplified?
For a first timer, yes, they're going to have to learn how the process works. It's brand new. It's not as easy as whipping out your credit card and tapping the little scanner like when you go shopping, right? It's not quite that simple. There's not a lot of plugins to websites right now where if you want to check out from your cart and you just click, pay with PayPal and it comes out of your PayPal balance. It's not that easy yet. So there's a bit of a learning curve, which is prohibitive for a lot of people because it's scary. You don't know what happens. Did the money really transfer? Did I do it right? Did it get lost on the blockchain? Did I actually, make the transfer properly? But to answer your question about transfer time, it can take as little as 5 to 10 minutes. It can take as long as, I've seen it take as long as 45 minutes to get a confirmed transfer. So at that rate right now, it's not a good form of payment where you're going to go to a store and, check out and you have to wait 45 minutes for the payment to clear for them to verify it. That's not realistic. But if you're sitting at home and you want to buy something online, or if you want to transfer something from one wallet to another, or you want to buy from an exchange to put it on your cold storage wallet, yeah, it doesn't matter if you have to wait 45 minutes. Like, who cares? It's coming to or going to wherever you need to. So yeah, there's some room for improvement. I don't know that this is going to be the ultimate form of currency at the end of the day, but I will say this: spend some time Googling or going on YouTube to understand why fiat currency. When I say fiat, that's paper money. That's basically like, you know, the US dollar, which is the main reserve currency around the world right now. But spend some time searching why fiat currency is going to die, and it will. We've seen different forms of currency throughout the years, whether it was coinage, you know, gold or silver, you know, moving into credit, moving into paper money sort of thing. The problem with fiat currency is they just print unlimited supplies of it. In the last year with COVID, with CERB relief in Canada, I don't know what they call the relief system in the US, but they don't have money on reserve where they're like, oh, we have a pandemic, let's just pull out some money from the drawer over here and we'll just disperse it to people nicely because we're the government, that's what we do. No, they print it, right? They just manufacture it out of thin air. And when you do that, it devalues everybody else's currency and it creates a whole slew of other problems later on down the road. So is it a problem? Yes, it's a massive problem. Most people don't understand the gravity of the problem of fiat currency, and will be, you know, sitting there twiddling their thumbs, wondering what happens when the shit hits the fan. It all kind of collapses, and it will one day. So, do I believe Bitcoin and crypto is a good hedge against all that? Absolutely. It's like gold. So you should have, I would say, about 5% of your reserves in crypto, maybe even higher. You know, maybe even 7 to 10%, but you know, you don't buy what you can't afford to lose. I mean, if you lose 5% of your investment portfolio, you're not really going to lose sleep overnight. I mean, I've done that several times in my life and easily recovered. So that's to answer the question on opinions on cryptocurrency. That's just my view. I don't know. Did you have any other views on that? Like, you don't have any crypto right now. You're kind of sitting on the sidelines.
I don't invest in that. I know you've spoken about it. I've considered it. I'm just not comfortable and confident in it at this point.
And that's like 99% of the population, which is why Bitcoin, a single Bitcoin can legitimately go up to $1 million in value, because most of the population have not bought into it. A lot of people get confused and like, well, I can't afford $20,000 in a Bitcoin. Well, you can buy Satoshis, right? Like you can buy $5 worth of Bitcoin because it's divisible into decimal points. I think it's all the way down to, I don't even know what the count is, but you can literally buy like $5 worth of Bitcoin, right? So anyway, we'll move from that topic because, you know, we could ramble on that for a while. The last thing I wanted to hit before we go, we've been on for 17 minutes, is a beef. I have a beef. You know what bothers me about this industry, about credit card debt relief and everything that we've done over the years? The amount of times
bothers me too. It bothers me. We spoke about this before the show, and it bothers me too.
The amount of times that I get comments and emails and messages, or, you know, like when I was in the office dealing with stuff, it's like, can you please spell debt correctly? Right? I think more often than not, more people spell it DEPT, like as in department store abbreviation. It's DEB as in Bobby T.
Yeah, or debit. Debit's another very common misquote for debt is debit.
Anyway, I just wanted to get that off my chest because it grinds my gears. What are we doing next week? You said you've got a couple of like case studies, like some examples of credit reports before and after the program, just to kind of show how credit is affected, because that seems to come up a lot.
Yeah, people are very concerned with their credit scores and their credit reports. So I want to use some examples. I'll email them to you so you can put them on your screen and you can share them. You're going to be able to show clients' credit reports, obviously with redacted information, so not specifying the individual's name, address, SIN number, date of birth, stuff like that. So there will be some redaction on the documents, but it's essentially going to show what the debt looks like with a credit report and a score during the program and after the program. It's also going to show how the debts are eliminated on the credit report and how it's reported differently on the credit report. So we're going to use that to show as a case study to individuals the benefits of the service when you're using a debt settlement program to eliminate your debt, and how quickly you can recover and how it can actually positively impact your credit report and your credit score.
All right, so that'll be 9 a.m. next Saturday. You can tune in live for that or watch the recording. Again, if you have over $15,000 worth of credit card debt, you live in Canada, right there, totaldebtfreedom.ca. I'll pin that in the top comment if you want to get a quote. So again, anywhere in Canada, I think with the exception of Alberta right now.
Yeah.
You can certainly get a quote from one of the senior debt consultants in the office, probably Bryce or Mark. But yeah, check that out if you have any questions about it. If not, we will see you guys next week, 9 a.m. Eastern.